Okay, does anybody want to do invocation? You didn't write it. Would you like to do one? Does anybody? Oh, would you? Because I was asking Tom. It's fine. Okay, I'll give you the opportunity, Jackie. Good evening. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Northfield Township Board to order. Please stand for the invocation and then the pledge.
Dear God, please quiet our hearts, quiet our minds, and give us the wisdom that we need to do today to select the right candidate. And as we ask our questions, as we have discussions, let us be mindful of what we're here today and the goal that we need to achieve. And thank you for everything that you provide in our community. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you. Please call the roll. Clerk Manley.
Bellinger.
Here.
Dockett.
Here.
Zelenak.
Here.
Trockley.
Here.
Manley here. Otto.
Here.
Chick.
Here.
Okay. We have a quorum. Everyone's here. I'd like a motion to adopt the balance of the agenda.
Motion to adopt the balance of the agenda.
Motion by Chick, support by
I'll support.
Support.
Manley. Any
What
discussion?
is the balance?
The call to the public, the clarifications, and the agenda items.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. We have an opportunity for call to the public now. If anyone would like to come and speak to us, you're welcome to come up. Oh, Mr. Gordon. 3 minutes, state your name and your address.
My name is still David Gordon. I live at the same address, 5558 Helmer Road. I appreciate getting the email yesterday that you're actually having this meeting today. It named 2 people that were going to be interviewed. It said 6 o'clock instead of 7. Thankfully, one of the members of the administration got to me and said I didn't need to be here at 6. But there's no information about the people you're interviewing. Although at the last meeting there was in the packet the resumes from the applicants, there was no names. So now when we get the names yesterday, we still don't know who's being interviewed because they don't attach to any of the documents that have names on them because none of the documents have names on them. So maybe at the next interview you can provide that information to the public so that when they go to the website they can say, oh, this person is being interviewed, and they can read up about them. That's all I had.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll double check that. I thought we had names on the ones that were put up today, or yesterday. There's no names on the ones?
Oh, they were put up again today?
Well, for tomorrow, there's 3 put up for tomorrow, and there's 2 were put up for today, yesterday, I believe. So,
You might get a bigger turnout with
check that
more,
again.
more notice.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Clarifications from the board? Don't, Mr. Dockett.
I agree with David Gordon. Don't pass out. But I didn't get anything until after 5 o'clock last night about this meeting. So I agree with you, David. We need to know about things ahead of time. But I've been complaining about that for 9 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dockett. Anyone else? Okay, correspondence and announcements. I have nothing at this time. Anyone else? Okay. Moving on to the agenda items, we have interviews for township manager position tonight. And we can have Mr. Aynes come in at this point. Welcome.
Thank you.
Come on up to the podium.
There's that table in the back.
Good evening. Welcome to Northfield Township.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming in for an interview with us today. I'm Marlene Chalkley, the Township Supervisor, and we'll start down here and each of us introduce ourselves, so we can start at this end with our trustees. Go ahead, Ms. Bellinger.
Good evening. My name is
Good
Tawn, and welcome to Northfield, and have a great interview. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dockett?
I am Stephen. May I call you Stephen?
Stephen or Steve, either one.
Okay. I met you downstairs,
Yes,
so welcome.
Okay.
thank you.
Ms. Zelnok?
Good evening. My name is Lenore Zelenak, and I'm the treasurer of our township. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. Hi, Kathy Manley. I'm the clerk, and nice to meet you. I
Good
met you
to meet
downstairs
you.
also.
Yes,
I'm Jackie Otto, and I'm also a township trustee.
But talk into the mic, will you please?
I'm Jackie Otto, and I'm also a township trustee.
thank you.
Hi, welcome. Glad to have you here. I'm Janet Chick. I'm also a township trustee, and can I make a real quick thing? To tell the people that are speaking to speak right into the microphone, otherwise they cannot hear you at home. Even you can hear them here, they can't hear you at home. And one other thing, the last time that we had done this, so that the poor person didn't have to stand for an hour, we had a table and a chair so they could put their notes out. Can we have them sit with the microphone, or?
We could
Yeah,
quickly
okay.
bring that table over if that would be
Just so you're more
helpful.
comfortable.
Yeah, we did talk about
Kind
that.
of weird standing there for an
Yeah.
hour or so.
Yeah. Well, I've done it both ways.
Okay, okay. And while she's doing that, then we have Stacy Belisle, and she's our labor attorney. She's here tonight. She's going to be our moderator for the questions later.
Glad.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. How's that? Oops. Okay. Thank you.
Difficulty is I may not have line of sight.
Right, just pull that out of just take the microphone out
Yep.
and get rid of the podium, and, there we go. Well, we'll get all these bugs worked out. Okay.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, that's great. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have 5 interviews for candidates being considered for township manager, and they're all being taped, and they will be aired after all 5 interviews have been completed. So there's no live interview, there's no live program going on tonight. It will be done after all 5 interviews are completed. So we'll hold 2 interviews tonight and 3 tomorrow night, beginning at 6 p.m. So tomorrow night, 6 to 9. Each interview will be about 45 minutes long. We have 8 primary questions that will be asked of each candidate. There will then be an opportunity for each board member to ask one follow-up question of their choosing. And this is purely in the interest of keeping to our time constraints. Can't hear?
Can't
Oops.
hear a thing.
Should I? Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, so anyway, we'll have 5 interviews for the candidates being considered, and they'll be taped and shown tomorrow night, at least after all the candidates have been interviewed. So each interview will be 45 minutes long. We'll have 8 primary questions that will be asked of each candidate. Then there'll be an opportunity for each board member to ask a follow-up question of their choosing if they so desire. And this is purely in the interest of keeping to our time. So before we get to the questions, Mr. Aynes, we'd like to give you an opportunity to make an introductory statement, and then we'll have our moderator, Stacy Belisle, take over.
Okay.
Welcome.
My name is Steve Aynes. I live in Garden City. We've been there 23 years now. I have been in Michigan before that on another occasion for 5 years, so almost 28 years in Michigan. But I've been a public administrator for 40 years. And I've served in 2 communities in Ohio, 1 in New York State, 2 here in Michigan, and now I work for a sanitation authority as the executive director. In my present capacity, I've been executive director since 2001, so I do believe in stability. And during that time, I've only missed 1 meeting, and that was with the excuse of going to Lansing with my wife for a conference. I'd also mention that in the profession, there's a lot of overlap. You meet a lot of people. And your next candidate was on my board of directors for several years when she was city manager of Inkster. And if I knew the names of the others, we'd probably have some contact that way too. But with that said, I'm presently working on a part-time basis. The Sanitation Authority originated in 1955 and built a waste incinerator, and then we brought in a private company, part of Detroit, or Baltimore Gas and Electric. And they tore down half the plant, converted it into a waste-to-energy plant, making enough electricity for 10,000 homes. We made sure in the process to make sure that the agreement was solid and protected the authority. And when they went bankrupt, we were in a good position. And we tore down the incinerator, won an award from the Michigan Recycling Coalition for how much we recycled, and then closed our landfill. And at that point, I recommended to the board that my time be cut from full-time to part-time. And that's continued to be the case. So I'm looking for further employment. My board is well aware of that.
Okay. Mr. Aynes, the board members have, this mic is good, right? Just want to make sure. I can't tell. Okay. All right. The board members have reviewed your resume, but would like to ask you to begin by giving us an overview of your education and experience as it relates to the township manager position and why you're interested in this position.
My educational background is I have a bachelor's in public administration with a double major in urban studies from Miami University, Oxford, Ohio. I also have a master's degree in public administration from the University of Dayton, Ohio. I'm a native of Kettering, which is a suburb of Dayton. Basically, that was 6 years of study towards becoming a manager, but I actually got interested as a high school senior. I was planning on going into teaching history and government, and there was an opportunity to do an internship with the local city, and I did so and found I could study stuff I enjoyed studying, but at the same time do something I thought was much more challenging. So in terms of this position, I have not been with a township previously, although I've had townships adjacent to facilities and communities I have served. And so it would be a growing experience to learn more about it. And I started to over the last few days, but there's a whole lot more I'm sure to learn. Thank you.
The citizens of Northfield Township are diverse and are very involved in this community with many different perspectives. Have you ever been in a position where 2 people wanted you to take opposite positions on the same subject? If so, what was the subject? How did you handle it, and what was the outcome?
Well, I've often encountered that, and the most notable one was the city council in Garden City was divided 4-3 on my selection, and they tended to not agree on anything. So every council meeting was an argument over, who would do what. I tried to work out agreements where they could both agree, maybe for different reasons. And in one case, they wanted me to fire a department head, 4 of them, and 3 of them wanted to reward the department head, and so we did an early retirement incentive that I got a 7-0 vote on. So sometimes you get agreement even though there's a difference of viewpoint. Other times it's a matter of backing off after you hear all the points from the immediate people to go into the community, find out what other people are thinking about it, research the issue as far as your history here, and to see if there's grounds for some kind of compromise at that point. But ultimately, I work for a majority of the board. I work for all of you, but if I'm ordered by more than half of you, then that's the direction I follow.
What do you consider to be the biggest challenges and opportunities that Northfield Township is facing?
Well, I think your proximity to a number of growing, developing areas like Ann Arbor and Brighton and so on, they present you some opportunities, and the people may be aware of your presence and what you got here to offer. At the same time, there's the dilemma of whether or not they feel they would do better in one of those adjacent communities. So I think that's a matter of education, determining what you see as being the best reasons for being here, both as an individual, as a family, but also for businesses. And the farming community, I'm sure, is under a lot of pressure to sell property. And I noticed in the one preservation notice that you had, I think it was 10 century farms, which is commendable. I have a number of family members who have been farmers over the years, so I have a sympathy that way. But it's a matter of working out what is reasonable for the long term of the community. I can't really be more specific until I would get into specific pieces of property and that type of thing.
What do you see as the role of township government in keeping the cost of government down while providing essential services to residents?
Well, I've never worked for a rich community. Everyone I've worked for has told me the dilemmas of budget cutting, need to keep the expenses down, so forth. And so we've actively worked on that. But at the same time, we've been able to accomplish a number of projects. When I was in Garden City as city manager, the audit was done 2 weeks after I arrived. If you're familiar with audits, there's restricted funds and there's unrestricted funds. The restricted, you can't do anything except what's designated. Unrestricted, you can do whatever you want to. When I arrived, they had $25,000 of unrestricted funds. 3 years later, when I left, they had $1.2 million of unrestricted funds. And so I think the auditors proved my point that during the time there, we were able to take advantage of a number of approaches to save money, to build up some reserve. And in addition to that, we were in an argument with Detroit Water and Sewer that provides the water to Garden City. And we ended up with proving that they had overcharged us for a number of years. And we secured $1.2 million of additional money back from Detroit, which is almost unheard of. And then in turn, Wayne County, who provides the sewage system, had to refund money from the sewer overcharges. So I think coming in, I would want to meet with each one of you individually as well as a group and find out what your ideas are about the community, where you want to go, what items you feel are good expenditures, which ones you think may be ones that could be put off or shouldn't be made, and then as a group working through that. Also, your staff would be extremely helpful to orient me that way and to see what types of things that they're involved in.
What specific employment experiences have demonstrated to you that you would be a capable township manager?
Well, you have some unique issues, I believe, with townships, but in any organization, whether it be public, private, my wife's an RN in hospitals, nursing homes, so forth, there's always politics. And in any case, you have to work through problems to reach resolution that's as satisfactory as you can. I think my 40 years, I would be bringing a lot of experience from a lot of different areas and be able to share that with you, with my observations of things. But at the same token, it's almost like a marriage. It's bringing together the knowledge and wisdom you have of your own community with my knowledge of how things have been done elsewhere. I think together we could make a lot of progress. So that's what I would intend to do, is to get oriented as quickly as possible. In Geneva, New York, one of the things I did that surprised people was I went door to door to the commercial businesses and introduced myself to the various people and asked what was going on with their businesses. And they indicated that was the first time that they knew of that a city manager had ever come to them and asked that kind of question. And we were able to resolve some issues for some of the businesses that had not been resolved for years. So I think I would bring a lot to the table.
Think of a job that you held where your goals were not clearly defined. What did you do about it?
Well, often when you come into a community, there are divisions on the board, there are divisions among the public. How do you deal with the situation, so forth. When I arrived in Geneva, New York, which is 14,000 people that are near Rochester, it's on the Finger Lakes, they had gone into debt to put in a lakefront development project, and they had borrowed extensively to reroute a highway away from the lake, creating land to develop. But then after they did that, the developer didn't follow through. And there was a lot of dissension in the community as to whether you should develop it as planned for business condominiums or keep it as a park. And ultimately, a hotel was built, but also the vast majority was kept for recreation. But then we were able to go back to the federal government through what was called the UDAG grant at that time, and we argued the economy being an issue, and that we should be allowed to demonstrate that other investments in the community should release money. And so we had a grocery store that was built about 2 miles from the lakefront, and the federal government allowed us to count that as part of the project and released $1.2 million of federal funds. When I got there, the community was so in debt for that project that it hurt every other aspect of their administration. And we tried to do what we could to offset that.
Describe a situation working in a group or team where there was interpersonal conflict. How did you approach the conflict, and what worked, what didn't work, and how did you manage the outcome?
Well, historically, one of the biggest conflicts is when you get at the negotiating table with your unions and you're trying to work out something where you're telling them you don't have any money and they're telling you they're not wanting to work under the present conditions. So it's a situation where you have to demonstrate your honesty, reliability, that what you are telling them is the truth. And at the same time, you look to them to give you ideas as to how you might be able to save money, and if you do, that there's ways in which you can share it with you. As an example, when I arrived in Geneva, Ohio, they had formed a police union, and they'd said it was because of lack of communication between the council administration and the police. And about 6 months after I arrived, they decertified themselves, which is almost unheard of in that area. When I went to Geneva, New York, and we were facing all these issues with the lakefront and the budget, we were going through 6 unions. And one of those in particular was the police union. And one of the things that I did as I was leaving was I asked different people in the community to give me letters of recommendation. I tried to make it like a photo of me from different angles, showing how I had worked with them. One of the police officers, who was the president of the union, had since retired and got elected to the county sheriff's position in the neighboring community. And he volunteered to give me a letter of recommendation where he emphasized that he didn't like everything I said to him, but he knew I was honest and I was presenting the facts correctly. And he respected that, and he highly recommended me for other positions. So I think you can work through a lot of issues if you just listen and are then honest with people.
When you've entered a new workplace in the past as a manager or supervisor, describe how you have gone about meeting and developing relationships with your new coworkers, supervisors, and reporting staff.
Well, with the staff, generally I would have staff meetings with department heads on a regular basis, but I also would be going to different individual employees in their workplaces and also to those department heads. And I have a background that entails a lot of public works, police, fire background, so I have an understanding of a lot of what they're dealing with. In the fire area, I see that you have a paid on-call fire department. When I was in Geneva, New York, they were very proud of having long-term volunteer fire departments, and they had 3 companies in one community of 14,000, each of which had over 100 members and had been in existence over 100 years. And I was invited to become a member of one of those groups, and even though I've been gone 23 years, I'm still a member paying the dues. So, you develop roots in the community, and some of those you maintain even after you're gone. In terms of the board, there are things that you might be willing to say publicly as a group, but there are other things that I think you'd want to say one-on-one to me, and so I like to have individual meetings as well. And then with citizens, businessmen, so forth, I came in town yesterday to get a feel for the community. I went to the library. I met one of the young ladies there who was very helpful. I came here to City Hall, to the clerk's office. I went to the grocery store, and I believe I met the owner. At least he acted like he was the owner. Had on a Red Wings outfit, and he liked my Detroit Tiger outfit. I also went to the hotel and met someone who might have been the manager or the assistant manager. And so, even coming in to investigate your community and look at the job, I'm already laying a groundwork for meeting people and talking to them about their issues. I've also found business people, while they may be interested in talking to me as the manager, they really like to talk to me as a customer. And so I make a point of shopping in the area as much as I can, and when they see you are concerned and you're involved in their business, so forth, that builds some bridges as well. I've joined various civic groups, long been a Rotarian, although I'm not now. Get involved with the Historical Society on occasions. My wife has gotten me involved in the garden club at times, and I finally recognized the difference between a weed and a flower. And then our church involvement. We get heavily involved in the church that we belong to when we go to each community, and they're not of the same denomination. We go into a community and we look for the church that would meet our needs as a family best, and not just by name. So there's a lot of ways you can get involved with people, and I think you have to do those in order to be effective as a manager.
It looks like we have time now for follow-up questions. It appears we have about 15 minutes for this segment. Who would like to begin? Ms. Bellinger.
Can you give a specific example of when you made a decision that benefited the taxpayers that was contrary to the direction the board wanted to go?
Well, that puts you on dangerous ground, because if you're contrary to the board, you may not be there very long. But there are times where you have to recommend things to the board that the board doesn't want to hear or they don't want to participate in. Generally, the biggest one, I think, is when you're proposing tax increases or water sewer increases. And in most of the communities, I was also a taxpayer and a participant in the water sewer billing. But, you would basically have to present to the board the facts as to why it was needed, what would be the accomplishment of doing it, that type of thing. And sometimes you try one way and it doesn't work, and you try a different way. As an example, we had a great need in Geneva, Ohio for a road construction, sewer line extension, a new city hall, a new jail. We were in an 1895 facility. Park improvements, a lot of different things, and we tried to put them all into one tax issue, and it was for an indefinite length of time. And we tried to specifically list projects because the feedback we had gotten from citizens was, well, you're getting this money or wanting this money, and I don't know that we'll ever get any specific benefit. Well, then after we listed specific projects, they came back and said, well, my street isn't on that list, and therefore I'm going to vote against it because I might never ever get any improvements to my street because of it. So you can be one way or the other. Well, we lost it, but then we came back with an alternative issue that was just for the replacement of the city hall and the jail facility, the police station, a little bit of the fire addition. We got the volunteers in the fire department heavily involved, and off-duty the police. And I think a lot of people underestimated the impact that that would have, and we also cut it back to a 6-year issue. So instead of bonding for the facility over 20 or 30 years, we said we're going to bond for it for 6 years, and we're going to pay it off in full in that time period. The result was we got it passed by 26 votes. So when people say their vote doesn't count, in that case, I think the opponents didn't come out to vote, and the proponents did. And I take great pride in having accomplished that because I left that community in 1989, and they had passed that about 1987, and so it was paid off in the early 90s, and they've benefited ever since. And it's kind of nice on occasion when I drive by it going back to see that we've collectively were able to accomplish that.
Thank you. Mr. Dockett?
Oops, you forgot to tell me to turn it on. I don't want to take up a lot of your time because I'd like to get everybody involved here. I would like to mention that we have 4 centennial farms that border each other in Northfield Township, which you are not going to find very many places. I don't have much of a question, but I have a statement I'd like to read. Northfield Township is mostly a rural community with a small downtown area, which with some commercial area and property and some other things sprinkled in between, mostly agricultural and residential. In my opinion, we have enough rules and regulations. The township should not pass any more new rules unless we cancel 2 other ones. Keep government out of the public life, the people's life, as much as possible. The people will find a way to get by. My question to you is, how much do you know about Northfield Township?
Well, I did not know that I was going to be invited till about a week ago. Obviously, I've been by on 23 many times, but I haven't stopped, and I wasn't aware of what your community was like. So I actually have an interview next week in another community, so I stopped my research on that one to do my research here. And a week, even a few days, isn't enough time to really come to an understanding. But I've been through a lot of your rural area at one time or another, and adjacent areas. For instance, the Plymouth Orchards on Warren Road. My church went there for many years when it was in season, had the donuts and cider and so forth. And you know, I know what a lot of that area is like. And as I was coming out today, I decided to come Warren Road out and noticed how much the housing in Canton had encroached on the farming community. It was much farther down the road than it was last time I was there. And so I think you have to weigh those benefits of growth with benefits of keeping the rural areas viable as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Oh, Stacy, thank you. I'm looking at your resume, but listening to you speaking, you sound, in your experience, that you've had some experience with planning and development. Do you have any credentials or certifications with planning or planning consultant or training?
Well, the initial internship I had was with the Kettering Planning Department, which is a community about 60,000 near Dayton, Ohio. And we were doing a land use study. And later I came back that summer and supervised 4 college students and continuing it. When I went to college, the urban studies major was Miami University's equivalent to local, regional, state planning. So I had that general background through that. In addition to that, in every community I've been in, I've been heavily involved in master plan development, in zoning issues, in the planning department, planning boards. I've been to, I estimate, over 1,000 city council meetings where there's a lot of those kind of issues have been discussed. And so I think I have a good background. In terms of certifications, a lot of what is done in most professions is a lot of continuing education. And so I've been active with Michigan Municipal League, with the AICP, I was a member for a few years, the Planning Association. I've been to 10 ICMA conferences, which is the International City County Management Association. Been involved in conferences in both New York and Ohio. And the list goes on and on of where I have had continuing education. But at the time I was city manager, a lot of those certifications that now are ones that people try to get to impress you are not available unless you actively are, at that point in time, the city manager. For instance, I looked into the clerk, state clerk provisions, and you have to be a clerk for so many years. And I looked into the personnel administration because for 3 years in the city of Ecorse, I was the HR director while I was still with the sanitation authority. But by the time I realized what was involved, I wasn't actively involved, so I can't go after that. And then, so I think the 40 years I have in the continuing education is my credentials as opposed to certifications. And if I were to become your township manager, that would be one thing that I think everyone needs is continuing education. In your case, I looked up the State Township Association, read a lot of their information, their policy recommendations, so forth, and noted that they have an annual conference and other training programs. And I would hope that you would allow me to go to those kind of things. Thank you. You're welcome.
Yes, Ms. Otto?
In any onboarding of a job, you usually have, a time when you have to acclimate yourself to the township and everything. What would you do in your first 100 days to get you up to speed?
Well, I hope I wouldn't get as much criticism as our president is getting in his first 100 days. You hit the ground running. You try to do as much as you can. You read every document you possibly can get. You talk to everyone that's involved at the county, sometimes the state, local, business, various interests in the community. Because people in the township will expect me to know everything about the township from the first day I'm in office. And that's just the way it's been in every city I've been in as well. So you can't take the time to sit back and relax and say, well, I've got the position, now I can take a year or so to get acclimated. So the first 100 days is going to be a very busy time, and I've already forewarned my wife and kids that I probably won't see much of them during that initial orientation.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Manley.
We have a pretty small office staff here. There's 2 deputies, a full-timer, and 2 part-timers. So kind of address probably one of their concerns is your management style. Are you more commander or coach, or how would you handle a small office?
Well, I come in assuming that you know what you're doing and your office is working well and your employees are working well, and if they weren't, you would have fired them before I got here. So I come in not looking for ways to be negative towards them, but to encourage them. I support continuing education, training, that sort of thing. I try to find out what their needs are, and not everybody is motivated by money. Sometimes it's by encouragement, sometimes it's by benefits, sometimes it's other ways. You just have to get to know your employees well enough to know what their situation is. As elected clerk, as elected treasurer and supervisor, as I understand it, there's a great number of restrictions what the manager can tell you what to do. So I certainly wouldn't be using that approach. But I think I come in on a friendly basis. I think I get along well with people, especially on a one-to-one basis. I think we have things in common. I can talk about grandkids, I can talk about kids, I can talk about all kinds of things that might be similar interest to them. And I want them to know me as a human being, not just as a commander, an orderer, or whatever. So, and I look for you to give me ideas, suggestions. If I'm out of line, let me know. I'd prefer you do it privately rather than on the floor of the township board. But you know, I'm open to change or adjustment or whatever. But if I see things that need to be changed in the township's operations, I will try to communicate those privately to the people involved or to the board. And if you are interested in pursuing that and want to discuss it further, we can bring it before the board at a public meeting and so forth. I also try to keep communications with all of the board. And now probably a lot of that would be by email if you have that available to you. In the past, I would send out weekly packets, and the board would complain about an inch packet of information they had to read through. And when you came to the meetings, you could tell who read it and who didn't. But you know, my point is that I'm trying to work together with you and not work against you.
Anyone else?
So why should we hire you?
Well, first off, I expect that everyone you interview could do the job. If they couldn't, you shouldn't interview them. So the question is, who do you feel would make the best match with you as an operation, as a board? And in my case, I have no intention of going elsewhere. If I come here, my intention is you're stuck with me. And you know, I'm not one that likes to move around from place to place. In my younger days, the profession was such that people would move two or three times or every 2 or 3 years and so forth. That's not a good way to do it. And so I would come in with the idea that I would want to be here for a long time to come. And to do that, you have to work well with people. But I think I bring a whole lot of background that I can't go into all the detail today. But I even work well with attorneys, so.
I don't have a vote.
I know that, but they look strongly to attorneys for recommendations, because anything you step out of line now, you can get sued for. But my brother and his wife are both retired attorneys, so.
Ms. Chalkley? Okay. Well, it looks like we have just a few more minutes left. Thank you for coming in tonight. The board will choose 2 or 3 candidates to return for a second interview in the next couple of weeks, and we'll contact you to let you know if you've been chosen to return. In closing, is there anything more that you would like to share with the board that you haven't had the opportunity to say as of yet?
Well, one thing I'd like to mention is I see you have a study on your wastewater treatment system and your sewer lines, and I've done 3 wastewater treatment plant expansions and 3 different treatment plants that I was responsible for, as well as multitudes of sewer lines. So I'm well acquainted with the operation. I think I could pick up on yours fairly quickly and what would be needed and so forth. So there's a lot of general things as a manager, but I have enough specific knowledge of a lot of different areas that I think that would be a benefit to the board. For instance, when I mentioned labor unions, I've worked with 19 labor unions over the years. When I mention attorneys, there's probably 20 different ones I've worked with. You know, there's lots of things that I think I have accomplished, and one of those is I've gotten along well with the press because they know that I'm open and honest and they can come to me at any time, and as one editorial said, even when they put my feet to the fire, I still return their phone calls. I appreciate the fact you do the Pledge of Allegiance and the prayer at the beginning. I am a follower of Jesus Christ. I believe very strongly in that. And so, on an ethical basis, I don't only report to you, but I have a higher authority I report to. And so I won't do anything illegal, unethical. And I think that's something that your board, as well as your community, should value in a manager.
And finally, do you have any questions for the board tonight?
I saw in the minutes that there was quite a bit of debate whether you even wanted to have a manager. I reviewed the minutes for the last 10, 12 months and saw the divided votes on compensation and comments from the public as well as the board. And I guess my biggest concern, if I was chosen, was whether that would be done as a slight majority decides to go that way, or if the full board would be supportive of my coming in as manager. Because if you have a divided council, it's, you know, as far as even the concept of having a manager, it makes it extremely difficult. It makes the manager very vulnerable. And so I would like to talk further about that issue if you were to have me back.
And perhaps the board can speak to that at a later date.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you all for having me. Appreciate it. Hope you have a good evening.
Thank you.
And thanks for letting me sit down.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Who wants to go get the next one? 5-minute recess, and we'll get our next candidate in. I don't know. We'll find out. There's a pretty good breeze coming in. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
I can't hear because I got these on. My hearing aids are on.
I'll go down and see you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for having
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it.
Surprised that your other colleague, A-Y-N-E-S.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there you go. That's true, yeah. Yeah.
Like in Wayne County.
Oh, yes, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you again, appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephen.
You too.
sure, I don't know. We used to have one that was the opposite. Unoccupied meant off and occupied meant, I don't know. We're gonna have, I hear ya. Heaters and, well, if he plugs it in there, we'll get both, you know?
I just worry about all this money we're wasting.
I hear. I hear.
Got the worst.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Yes, no jury duty, so far. I'm one group off. They went all the way up to my group and then, so I don't know what happens now. I don't know. They say that they will, they'll notify me of another date, so I have no idea what that means. We'll see. I'm picking my brain, let me tell you. Yeah. I know all the police, I know all the judges, I know everyone. And I really like all of them, so I'm absolutely, they're always right, yes.
My daughter went on a business trip to Florida, and so she's sending me nanner pictures.
Oh. And did you say, hey, it's 83?
Yeah, right. What is it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Okay, good evening. I'd like to welcome you. Ann, how do you pronounce your last name? Ann Capela. It's nice to have you here at Northfield Township. Thanks for coming in for an interview today. You feel free to sit down. Thank you. Okay.
Is the mic to use?
That's for you. Okay. I'm Marlene Chalkley. I'm the Township Supervisor, and we're going to go along and everyone can introduce themselves, and I'll have a little more to say. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Tawn, and I'm a trustee here at Northfield.
How are you?
Yeah, very good. Welcome to Northfield.
Mr. Dockett.
Wayne Dockett, welcome.
Good evening, Lenore Zelenak, Treasurer of the Township.
Hi, Kathleen Manley, Township Clerk.
And welcome Jackie Otto, Township Trustee.
Hi, Jackie.
And welcome as well, Janet Chick, Township Trustee.
Hi, Janet.
Glad to have you here.
I'm Stacy Belisle. I'm the Township's labor attorney.
Okay. Oh, great. Well, we've chosen 5 candidates, so we are going to have interviewing 5 different candidates. And those interviews will be taped, all 5 of them, but none of them will be shown until after all of the interviews are over with. So we're holding 2 interviews tonight and 3 tomorrow, beginning at 6 p.m. So each interview will be 45 minutes long, and you already know that from the letter you got. We have 8 primary questions that will be asked of each candidate. Then there'll be an opportunity for each board member to ask 1 follow-up question of their choosing. And this is purely in the interest of time constraints, not like we want to shut anybody down. So before we get to the actual questions, we'd like to give you an opportunity to make an introductory statement about yourself.
Well, good evening. Thank you for having me. And I actually was here last night just scouting, doing a little bit of scouting, and exit on the 6 mile was not closed as it is tonight, so I was a little bit delayed. They closed last night. So I did have a wonderful scenic tour. I wanted to thank you for having me again, and but just way of introduction, most of you have read my resume, and I'm glad to be here, and I'm ready to begin the questions in the interest of time.
The board members have reviewed your resume, but would like to ask you to begin by giving an overview of your education and experience as it relates to the township manager position and why you're interested in this position.
Well, as you have perused my resume, I have been in the public management in the career for almost 20 years, over 20 years, in fact. I graduated from Wayne State University here in Detroit.
with a master's degree in public administration. At the time, my major was public personnel management. I think they call it human resources now. And proceeded to I actually started my career with Wayne County, working for a commissioner, and progressed to work in different areas, mostly rural areas of the country. Did manage a couple of the more of an urban areas, particularly Inkster, which continues to struggle economically, but I think they're on the way back, and have held a wide variety of positions. And one of my most interesting positions, I took a little bit of a hiatus and worked for Wayne State University as international student advisor, which was very challenging. And when I got back from Alaska, I decided to teach. So if any of you wanted to get great experiences of teaching kindergarten and grade 2s, it's terrific. But I do want to get back to my main roots in my career, and I have a diverse experience and knowledge, very wide experience about policy, intergovernmental relations, when it comes to infrastructure. Even though there are many people who, complain about the traffic, I'm excited about the fixes they're doing on 23. I think it's a little bit of pain for a few months, but it's going to be a terrific addition. And I'm glad that the state is proceeding with improving the roads. And I think we need to continue to cooperate with the state and the federal government to continue to improve our infrastructure that is needed very much. Why I'm interested in townships? I've always worked in the mostly rural settings. I have a lot of experience. I have experience as even a town manager, city manager, county manager, so I bring with me many, many years of experience in different settings, and I believe I can work very effectively for you in interaction with other governmental entities that you interact with in order to get good policies, financial backing, and affect the way both the state and the federal government affect our local governments.
The citizens of Northfield Township are diverse and are very involved in this community with many different perspectives. Have you ever been in a position where two people wanted you to take opposite positions on the same subject? What was the subject? How did you handle it? And what was the outcome?
I have been in that position many times. Again, what I would like to do is I listen, and I hearken back to some of my experiences in a place like Minturn, Colorado, which is a very small town, about 1,200 people on the other side of Vail. Vail is an international city with many, many wealthy people coming from all over the world that have homes, and of course Minturn is on the other side of the mountain, and it was offered to do a development and annexation of 5,600 acres. So you can imagine this small mountain community living there peacefully, and all of a sudden they have an offer to annex 5,600 acres. And that sparked a lot of debate in the community, and I think that my goal is always to follow the facts, and making sure that I could give good recommendations to the decision-making body, and that's how I operate, because I don't make the decisions as far as the policy goes. I make recommendations, but I better back up my recommendations with some facts and good research. I always default, or if I have to make the decision, I'm a very conservative thinker in the sense that I err on the side of caution.
What do you consider to be the biggest challenges and opportunities that Northfield Township is facing?
Well, as I drove around last night, and I wanted to sort of get into the thinking of what do residents here experience, because I have property in West Bloomfield Township, and it's a small town. It's a township that has grown a lot and has felt the pressure of urbanism. And I think the Northfield Township will do that. It'll continue. The roads are improving, but with that comes a lot of pressures to develop, to have urban areas. And as more people and people discover what a beautiful place this is, and it's still so charming, I think you will have those pressures. And then with that comes the pressure of development, the pressure of water and sewer provision, and everything that comes with development. And that's how I see a lot of it needs for infrastructure. Even the current residents, you know, there's a lot of need for infrastructure all over the nation, and particularly in Michigan.
What do you see as the role of township government in keeping the cost of government down while providing essential services to residents?
Well, my philosophy is that really government doesn't have all the answers. You know, I like to listen to the residents, and there's a lot of areas that government can step in, but as in a role of trying to facilitate, particularly a lot of governments will say, we'll do this economic development, this economic development. Governments can facilitate and create good policies for various economic developments, but you know, government doesn't always have all the answers, and I think the answer lies quite often with the residents and a lot of the community groups. And I've sat on many, many meetings at night, just like you do, and I listen to the residents offer opinions, planning and zoning commissions. If we listen to our residents, I think we'd be pleasantly surprised that they have better answers often than we do.
What specific employment experiences have demonstrated to you that you would be a capable township manager?
Well, again, I have over 20 years of experience in various government settings. I think what the township here would be getting is an experienced manager that can discern. My knowledge is guided by my experience, and I believe that I would be a very good manager. I did work in Oakland Township, but I also understand the relationships between townships, towns, counties, and the role of the township plays, and that it is the closest government to the people. It is the government, and those of you who serve as elected officials, you live here, you work here, you see the people in the grocery store, and I think for me, having the knowledge that I have and the experience in various settings and the variety of experience, I would be a good fit both to manage this role, but also to interact with other governmental entities. That we need to have partnerships, and partnership is the key to successful infrastructure and successful, I think, governing and policies. We cannot go it alone, and I find that building partnerships is the key to our success.
Think of a job that you held where your goals were not clearly defined. What did you do about it?
Actually, in many of my jobs, my goals were not clearly defined. And even if they are defined, you find that you have to have some level of a leeway to work with people and elected officials and the residents. When the goals are not clearly defined, I follow the law. I always go back to the statutes and I follow the law. And I think the law is where I find the definitions. But in working with governmental bodies, I always want to go back and do some work sessions and say, what is it that you expect of me? What are the projects you're looking to do? What changes are you going to do? And if I do enact changes, will you stand by me as elected officials? So we need to have those goals together as partners. And I think that would be our key to successful manager here in Northfield Township.
Describe a situation working in a group or team where there was interpersonal conflict. How did you approach the conflict, and what worked? What didn't work, and how did you manage the outcome?
I'm trying to give you a situation, and sometimes you learn lessons, and I come to you with experience and learning lessons when there are interpersonal conflicts among elected officials. I've seen many of them, but again, I like to stick with the law and try and dialogue with the officials and try to find a common ground for them. I think there are times that are, there are political differences, and I just allow people to work those out. I stay away from being the judge and the jury, but I think one of the other things I will tell you that with experience comes the fact that I've learned how to keep confidence. People come to my office and to me when I'm a manager and ask for many things, suggest many things. I try to keep things confidential, and I've learned to talk to people, listen to people, and not give up their confidence. And that keeps it down to a conflict, because sometimes people will just want to verbalize their conflict. They not necessarily want to do anything about it, and I'm there to listen. And sometimes I advise them, perhaps we should go this way, and offer some suggestions to the elected officials. Sometimes they listen to me, sometimes they don't, but that's okay.
When you have entered a new workplace in the past as a manager or supervisor, describe how you have gone about meeting and developing relationships with new coworkers, supervisors, and reporting staff.
Well, one of the things that I've learned is working with staff is understanding to work the day-to-day operations, to understand and to identify who can be the person who's helpful to you in working day-to-day, and just getting things through, getting familiar with the day-to-day operation, and mostly the programs that are installed on the computers. And also meeting with the staff, introducing myself, trying to make staff at ease and let them know that I'm approachable and they can come and talk to me. I also interview staff one-on-one and talk to them about their experiences, because it's very important that the current staff you have a level of trust with your staff that they can tell you, because I think it's important to know the truth, and that people don't sugarcoat it, just give it to you and explain to you. So that's with the staff, and I usually hold weekly meetings with the staff, particularly after any kind of elected official meetings or committees. I work very hard, and I actually really enjoy going out in the community. I offer myself as a guest lunch speaker, or update the community. I've been known and this is the truth, in Minturn, Colorado. I even offered to cook for the seniors, and the best letter I've ever gotten was when they addressed it to Capela, town manager and cook. That was my fun moment. I still kept that. But I think getting out in the community and also letting the other governmental bodies know that, I'm new, I'm here, and also working with the elected officials. And normally what I try to do is set up time to talk to them one-on-one, see what their goals are and where they're at. Sometimes they confine things into me, but really getting to know the coworkers, the elected officials in the community. And it's very important to get out in the community. It is for me. And I attend chamber dinners, lunches, whatever is necessary to get out and meet the community, and shop locally. And a lot of times you just meet people in the store.
We now have an opportunity for follow-up questions. So it looks like we have several minutes.
Okay.
Who would like to begin? Ms. Bellinger.
Hello.
Hi there.
Let's see, I got a question here. Can you give a specific example of when you made a decision that benefited the taxpayers that was contrary to the direction that the board wanted to go?
Well, I'm always reminded that I work for the board. They are my the body is my supervisor. But having said that, I work with listen to a lot of the people that have good ideas, and early on in my career, I was the executive director of a taxpayers association. I was a taxpayers watchdog in Sioux City, Iowa, many years ago. So I do a lot of analysis and understand the financial impact. my decisions are always based on the direction of the trustees, but I want to give them different information. And I have been successful in changing their mind and showing them the history and also the financial impact. And I think one of the debates that are occurring and still are occurring in whether it's Oakland Township or so is about the what we charge for water rates, and where we get our water. And, you know, oddly enough, that's one of the hottest topics always, is water and the services. So I believe that the specific example is when we were looking at Inkster, Michigan, it was my opinion at the time that the city had to size down its police force. They could no longer sustain 67 members, but the worst off than that is I did an analysis, and the city would not enforce shutdown on the water, and people and the residents were used to not paying for their waters. We had residents didn't pay their water bill for 11 years. They didn't have to, because there was no enforcement. So that was a controversial decision, and also to install new water meters and to put efficiencies, and in the long term, the water customers are water customers, and the general taxpayer was picking up the bills for all the water customers. And I separated those monies and said, you know, this is the general customer and general fund, and it is the customers and those users who have to bear the burden of paying for a service that they're getting. It should not go on the back of the general taxpayers. Otherwise, you know, services should pay for services, and development should pay for development.
Anyone else? Mr. Dockett.
2 years in Bethel.
Yes, sir. Bethel, Alaska.
I know. I was 4 years in King Salmon. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it was the same situation. You had 50 miles of roads to nowhere. At where I was 20 miles to nowhere. My question is, how much do you know about Northfield Township?
Well, depends how much detail you wanted me to go into. I just, you know, generally, again, I am from this area. I consider myself, I moved to the Detroit area in 1992 and did my master's degree, and, you know, I own property here in Michigan and in the general area. I know that the township will, in the future, be under great pressure for growth. I see the 96 corridor. I see, you know, as you drive from 96 from Novi to here, you can see it. You can see, you know, with the suburban showplace, while the township tries to maintain that special feeling of rural, because it's beautiful. I mean, I took the scenic route coming here, and with the sun setting, what a gem, what a beautiful place. And how do you balance that? And I think that will be the pressure that is here. And also providing the services that the residents are demanding and rightfully, you know, they're expecting, is going to be a challenge, because those services for water is going to get more and more expensive, and power.
Okay, another minute or two. I see on your employment history, in 3 different places it says, "May we contact the employer for references?" You did not answer on the top one, you did not answer on the center one, and you did not answer on the last one. Is there a reason?
No, sir. You can contact any of my
Okay,
former
there's
employers.
There's no X's.
I think the X is in this tiny little, and I looked at it, and it was in this tiny little square, and I
Yes.
was having a hard time seeing it, and then I saw it, and I went back and corrected it with a bigger X. So I said, no, I better put that in the square. I try to make that
Well,
square all the time.
There's nothing on mine anyway, and I just got it last night, and that's why I'm asking. Otherwise, maybe
No,
could-
sir, you can contact any of my employers
thank you very much.
at any time. You know, I left Alaska under very nice circumstances, worked till 5 o'clock that night trying to get everything done. what I intended to do.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Chick.
As township manager, how much time are you willing to dedicate to the community? It's typically like a 24-hour job sometimes.
It
so,
is.
yeah.
You know, I'm a dedicated career person. Well, to be honest, I'm a dedicated career woman, you know, but politically correct, I say person. But I am often, when people ask for my weakness, I will tell you that I'm an avid researcher. I will research policies, and I understand this is not a 9-to-5 job. There are many committee meetings that I sit through. I am not in the habit of punching the clock. And in fact, I've had trustees and council members say, you ought to go home. What are you doing there at 11 o'clock at night? I said, well, you know, I get going into research, and I try to put things together and make sure that, you know, if I understand the past of all the various policies and how you arrived at something, then I can do a better job for the future. And I do stay for meetings, and often, you know, that's my role.
Okay. In your experience, have you worked with or created capital improvement plans for communities?
Oh, many
Okay.
capital improvement plans. In fact, a number of capital improvement plans I can cite to you, anywhere from Walworth County, Wisconsin, which was an extremely complex process because they had 35 county board members, and they sat committees in management. It's a trifurcated way of governing, and it took a better part of 2 years to put a capital improvement plan together, approve it, achieve better bond rating, take it to the bond raters, and in fact, the bond raters told the county, if you don't improve your internal organization and size down what you have in administration, you're not going to get a better rating. And if you are looking to borrow money, as they were, for $60 million for jail and other facilities, we had to spruce up that organization. So we've done capital improvements plans in Inkster. Definitely capital improvement plan we were looking at, particularly in Inkster, in places that are very urban. You have to have it. And in many places, you're required to have a capital improvement plan by the state law, because many times when you are looking at grants, when you're looking at loans, part of your submission says, where's your capital improvement plan? How does this project or this money that you're asking the state for or the federal government, how does this fit into your capital improvement plan? So I'm very familiar with both working, and it requires a lot of work of elected officials too.
Yes, it does.
Because the staff can put something together and we can come up with very good plans, but in the end, it comes back to elected officials to make those priorities.
All right, thank you.
Next, it's Ms. Otto.
Excuse me, I got a cold. On any onboarding process, when you come into the township, you learn the ropes, you learn your job and everything. What would you do in the first 100 days to get to know your job better?
Well, I think during the day, I meet a lot of individuals. A lot of people, when you're new, want to have access to you and give your, you know, what their issues are, you know, whether their particular issue that they want fixed, and they see an opportunity with the new administration. Also, I believe that it would be very beneficial for me to ensure that, you know, whatever's sitting in the old files and what are the projects that I'm obligated to do. For instance, if the township has to pay its bills, and making sure those bills are paid on time. And that's, you know, needs to be done, and anything that needs to be brought to the Board of Trustees. Also, I would take a look at looking for establishment of some goals. I think it would be very good for me to get some goals from the elected officials. That way we both know and we're singing from the same song sheet, so to speak. That's very important. I think that really looking any of the legal issues that you have, if I have to make sure that we are squared away as far as meeting our legal obligations. Also taking a look at human resources, if in fact A lot of times when I walk into a position, there's a labor contract that hasn't been finished. So, looking at that and looking at the organization, whether or not the organization is right-sized, if I may say so, and what are we planning for the future? How do we need to be organized in order to deliver services? Certainly, the way we were organized 20 years ago, in these, like stovepipes, it doesn't work today. You have lots of access to communication, email, posting on the website. So I think it's a different way of managing, and I would take a look at whether or not that is in place and what do we need to implement.
Anyone else? Yes.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years from now?
Hopefully working here, and I promised my grandkids that I would take them on a road trip in the camper and throughout the United States. But I would like to work. I actually don't ever intend to retire. I try that. So I'd like to see myself working, having an impact, having a positive difference. And when you get to a certain stage of experience, hopefully I would be mentoring people, mentoring staff that look for those hidden gems, the diamond in the rough, young public administrator that's coming up that wants to learn. I have mentored many young women and men in public administration and public management, and how to write and good policies, and mentor them how to make sure that they give a picture on the page, because elected officials are very busy, and if you give them 5-6 pages of writing paragraph after paragraph, it's going to get lost. I said, I usually guide them to make sure, and I guide the organization what's important. As far as working, it's good to have policy, HR policies. But really, working in Alaska taught me how to do 3 basic things and require of your staff. I want everyone to show up for work. Just show up. And when you get to work, make sure you pay attention to what you're doing. Pay attention. And then 3, just care a little bit about what you do. And if we have those things in place, that's how I mentor my staff. I don't look at it as my staff. I'm the leader of a team, and people don't ever work for me. They work with me.
Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Chockley.
So you have a real wide variety of locations of employment, and
Yes, ma'am.
ranging from 1 year to like 3 years or so. And can you give us some insight on, was it wanderlust, or
Some of it
all-
was
all over the country?
Yes, ma'am. Some of it was. I had started when I worked for Livingston County, Illinois. I had a terrific opportunity to work in Walworth County in Wisconsin. They were working on jail and capital improvement plan and organization, and I had one of their elected officials approach me, see if I was interested, because I gained a reputation of doing things. And from there I went to California, because I always wanted to work in California. I really wanted to see what it was like. So some of it was, and some of it was coming back to be with my family. I loved living in Colorado, but I just wanted to get back to Michigan, and when the grandkids came, my goal is to be within driving distance. And I also own property here in West Bloomfield Township.
Thank you.
Ms. Manley.
You started telling us when we asked about the different perspectives about in Colorado where they wanted to annex the land.
Yes,
Can you
ma'am.
say how that ended and what side were you on?
Well, my side was to work through this, and I saw this as an opportunity. And if, in fact, this was an opportunity for the town who wanted some development, they wanted some amenities. So if the development was going to come, we needed to, it's like train tracks. If the train is coming, build the train tracks where you want them to go, not where someone else is going to tell you where to put them. And I think, and don't hurry it up, take your time. So eventually, the annexation process is extremely long process, and it was complicated because there was some brownfields and land under federal supervision for pollution of a mine. So it was very complicated, and in the end, the town did vote to annex because it goes to the people in the end, and there was a lot of debate in the community. There was a lot of detractors, but in the end they did, and the town did achieve. While the developer sold the development, the town did achieve and gain the new roads, new community center, park. So they gained quite a bit, and I think it will serve them well in many, many years to come. The economy, downturned a little bit, and the McMansions weren't being built, and there were some issues. But in the end, the town is 5,000 acres bigger, and I believe that that's going to, in the long term, that's going to impact them positively. Sometimes things sputter away, but just keep going at it, and I think that's what I would encourage you to do. Lay a good foundation. Once you lay a good foundation, build on it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming in tonight. Procedurally, the board will choose 2 or 3 candidates to return for a second interview in the next couple of weeks, and we'll contact you to let you know if you've been chosen to return. In conclusion or closing, is there anything more that you would like to share with the board that you haven't had an opportunity to share yet tonight?
I think I wanted to share with the board, just mostly emphasize, I understand your questions on the fact that I did work, but I look at in different places, but I look at, wherever I stepped in, I was able to manage and learn and manage well, and many times there were very, very controversial issues, and I take them head on and work and my way through it I power through it, and quite often I have to think out of the box to get certain things done. I understand the complexity. Not many of my colleagues in the public administration sector understand townships. They really don't when you try and explain to them. Many of them don't understand when you have this composition of elected officials and the role. So I think my strength is in understanding how this functions, bringing to you many ideas from different places, because whenever a township undertakes a project or they want to do something, a lot of times, more often than not, you'd say, well, how did the other people do it? Well, with my experience, I can share with you, how did you do it someplace else? How were you able to overcome those challenges? And that's what I bring to the table. Pretty steady. You'll never find me losing my temper or trying to embarrass in any way. I power through and persevere in getting difficult things done through, and it's sometimes when my plan A doesn't go through the elected officials, I'd say, okay, let's do a plan B or a plan C, but a lot of times plan B will work, once the ideas meld together, and that's what I bring to you, the ability to understand that outside of the box there's plan A, but there's also a plan B. Sometimes the plan B will work really well. So with that, I want to close, and I want to let you know that I really, really enjoy the township on many occasions. I'm here quite often, and would love to find a place for my kayak.
Thank you. Do you have any questions or issues for the board?
I do. Just want to get a sense of timeline. When do you believe that you'll be looking to put the position or fill it, so I can kind of gauge my timeline? You have a sense of when do you want to get this accomplished and put someone in place?
We haven't set up the next meeting yet to discuss this, So, and we have to bring in the second interviews,
Okay, so you're looking at second interview, you're perhaps looking,
a month or so.
another
3
month or
or 4
so.
weeks. Mhm.
Okay, maybe if you were going through the end of May, maybe middle of June or end of June?
Sounds about.
I think we should do it as soon as possible.
Okay.
We can't afford to.
I mean,
wait.
part of it has to do with, we would have to go through second interviews, then we would have to go through selection, then you would have to go through,
Background checks.
background checks, that type of thing, so yes.
Absolutely,
that's
and it
why.
all takes time. All right, well, it kind of gives me a sense of timing, and it's a very lovely building. You have very lovely building, and so thank you for having me. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Okay. So our next item on the agenda is a second call to the public. And you're excused if you'd like to go. You're welcome to sit in the rest if you want. There's no more candidates tonight, so
No,
you're
you're fine.
you're fine. Thank you. Okay, second call to the public, if anyone would like to come up and share anything at this time. Okay, seeing no one, board member comments. Do we have any tonight? Mr. Dockett?
I'm very serious about this. We need to do something about the heat in here in this building. I do not like to see us wasting the township treasure on, it's just terrible that we just waste all the electricity and all the gas. We just open the windows and let it go out. The people are paying for this. It's just silly. I can't understand. Is there someone in the township who's in charge of this building?
Well, officially it's Chief Wagner. We have had Train in to take a look at our heating and cooling system, and we are having difficulties. They are working on it, and we're also looking at our pricing for gas and electric at this point, too. I agree, we have a problem here. It's a capital improvement issue, though. If we would like to, take the bull by the horns here and do something, it's probably going to be extremely expensive, but I agree, it's a problem.
It's been, I'm not hounding you, but ever since the building was built, it has not been right. But
Right.
it seems like after all these years, we could get something going here. Thank you.
Ms. Bellinger?
I see we have an addition to tomorrow's agenda.
Yes, we do.
I haven't had time to really look through here real quickly, as if somebody knows what this may be about. Is this the easements for those? Okay. I was under the impression, this was a couple weeks ago, that they had until Friday of a particular day to come up with agreeing. So at that point, that issue was, that offer was then, what's the proper word, ended or did not occur. So now is this coming back again?
I can explain what happened. Got a phone call. Well, actually, first off, I attended the Wildwood Lake Homeowners Association. They wanted to know what was happening with the pathway. And I explained to them that it was ending. We were going to leave out the 4 easements because we did not get 2 of them. After that meeting, and there wasn't a lot of discussion at that meeting, after that meeting, they must have talked about it, but we got a call. Well, Ms. Zelnick had some interaction with one of the members, but I got a call on Monday morning, just yesterday, and the homeowners wanted to raise the extra money to meet the price that the 2 homeowners wanted for their easements, because they were that serious about having the pathway completed. So they are in the process of raising $6,500 to make up the difference. between what we offered and the $20,000 that each of the two landowners wanted. And so I've checked into it with the construction company, and it's can be done still, can be done. I also talked to the two gentlemen who we needed to get the easements from. I have a signed copy from one of the gentlemen, and the other one is coming in tomorrow to sign his easement. So we will have the easements signed. The price will not go up. The homeowners are raising the $6,500, so it's our decision on whether we want to accept that at this point to complete the path. And so I put it on the agenda for tomorrow night so that we wouldn't delay the construction if there should be the will of this board to continue. Okay, is that helpful?
Yeah, that's helpful. It's just, it really seems like we talked about, I think the word extortion keeps coming to mind with these property owners and the exorbitant amount of money that they are firm at trying to extort the community for. I think this is absolutely ridiculous. I really, there's a lot on this issue.
Their neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mr. Dockett?
How is this gonna work? Does somebody that has voted no on this have to bring it back? You know, we've run into this problem before.
He's saying that we already voted no.
It's a different issue.
Well, it's not a different issue, in my opinion.
Well, I think the board has always agreed on the price that was proposed. We didn't agree on
No, we
anything
didn't
different.
agree, but we voted on it. Some of us, enough agreed. But the way it worked before, if you want to change something, somebody that voted no has got to vote yes.
But we're not paying extra for the easements, other people are. I think that's the difference, yeah.
We can, I can ask Brad and Paul
And I
about
would
that.
ask them even if we have to bring it up for a vote. It's already been voted on.
Well, but they also didn't respond. They didn't respond by the date that we had set.
Well, maybe just-
So,
Yeah, that was my point, that they didn't
Yeah.
respond by that particular Friday, and so it
I
was
thought it was
done.
over with.
yeah.
Yes, me as
So
well.
I will follow up with, although,
But we're gonna need a letter from him, I think.
A letter
saying it's
from-
okay.
from Burns and Maines,
From the association, I
from the
think.
association, they're gonna be here with a check tomorrow night.
Okay. Yeah, seriously.
They're concerned about the safety of the children, not, being forced out onto the road. And trespassing is not an option.
I'm just wondering why we can do it one way one time, another way the next time. That's all I'm saying. It
Okay,
would-
clarification.
that's right.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yes, I have so what are the next steps for selecting the township? So we have the interviews tomorrow, and then from then, what meeting are we going to select our top 2 to 3 candidates?
We should probably have a special meeting the following week.
Speak, talking to the mic.
I mean,
So we should have a special meeting the following week to pick the top 2 or 3?
Are you saying outside of our board meeting or?
Right.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean, is it a
however you
closed
wanna schedule
session,
it.
Or in
is it,
addition to our
I
board
mean,
meeting?
is it a closed session or is it an open session? And we just add it to
I
our,
would think it would have to
I'm
be
ju-
an open
okay,
session.
so
Yeah.
we just add it as an agenda item at our meeting on Tuesday?
Yeah.
May 23rd?
okay.
And so is it, again, we're going to do like the tabulation, the 5 candidates, the trustees, and then we'll have it, and then we'll discuss it at the township meeting?
I think we'll just probably
I would
negotiate it.
recommend that.
Yeah, just like we did last time, and just, okay.
Okay.
So at the next meeting, we'll have it, and then we'll, at that meeting, we'll schedule the next interviews.
That's 1 week from today.
Yes.
Yes, we need to,
Right.
excuse me?
Next Tuesday.
Today's Tuesday.
And the
So-
following Tuesday, yeah.
Next Tuesday is the board meeting, so we're saying at the board meeting, it's part of an agenda item.
Yeah, okay. Well, we need to get moving on it.
Okay.
We're losing people fast here.
Yep. Okay. I will be gone between So I'll just give you my tabulation, and I'll trust that you all can manage that. And Jackie, would you be interested in running the meeting? If I mean, it's all up to
Yeah,
all
I
of
can.
you to decide, but I'll be gone.
Okay.
Well, Manly's got to open it, though, don't you? That's the law. She opens.
Yeah, you have to make a motion.
Yeah,
to
she
make-
opens and then you,
Yeah.
I'm not telling you what to do,
That's
but
fine.
you have
That's
to
how it
open
happens.
next
And-
Tuesday.
Or Kathy could run it too, if you'd like to run the meeting.
No,
Okay,
but
volunteers are good.
she can run it, but Manly's got to open the meeting.
Yeah,
Right.
she has to open it and then make the motion.
Yeah,
Okay.
Somebody support it, and then I can do it.
that's right.
I think, do you want to set a date tonight for the second round of interviews? Do it like the following Tuesday after the meeting?
Fine.
Just
Um,
get it done and,
I'd sort of like to be here if
When
that's
are you back?
possible. June 4th.
Yep. Dial in.
Oh, we got to move. Let's,
No, I mean,
Okay.
I agree. I think, yeah, I say we interview Wednesday, right? We'll have our candidates on Tuesday. And, I mean, it's going to take, I would think, a few days, so I would think the following Tuesday.
Yeah. Just keep with the
Which is-
Tuesdays, and then,
that date.
yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, so you're right, we should pick a date.
get it done.
So our meeting's the 23rd,
Mhm.
so the 30th, that's the Tuesday after Memorial Day?
Unless you want to do it on the 31st.
I don't care.
Either day's fine.
Anybody have an opinion, Tuesday or Wednesday?
For what exactly, the second interview?
Second interviews.
Oh,
What is
okay.
it?
What?
No,
31st.
would be planning, tomorrow would be planning commission, so 2 weeks
Right.
well, but
after that.
Why
but
don't we
yours
go,
is the first Wednesday in
That's right.
June, so.
go Tuesday if something happens, it's Wednesday. I mean, let's not wait till Wednesday and
All right,
find
let's
out.
go, well, let's schedule May 30th,
Just
tentative
do
for
it.
second
Okay.
interviews.
Okay.
Tuesday, May 30th. Okay,
Yep.
Second interviews on the 30th, correct?
right.
Do that after.
Okay,
Okay.
so 23rd and 30th. Okay, I will be missing both of those meetings, but I'll let you know who I think would, for the first tabulation for the second
Okay,
interview.
right, okay.
Okay, and, okay,
Thank you.
yep. Well, all right. Board member comments done then? Oh,
Nothing.
Ms. Chick.
I just wanted to say, I'm not sure who's doing it, but I'm pretty sure it's the Horseshoe Lake Homeowners Association that are putting the flowers along
Yes,
this.
they are.
That is awesome. That looks so nice, so thank you to them for doing that. It looks
Very
really
good.
nice. We
That
should
was-
all do that.
That was Brian Trim.
Okay. All right. Move to adjourn, and I'll see everybody at 6 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay.
Support.
Okay.
6
Motion by
o'clock tomorrow.
Chalkley, yep, support by
Oh, yeah.
Chick.
Is that 6? Oh, we got 3.
We're moving on, we're moving on. We got three.
If somebody drops out, let's make it 7, though.
Yeah, I know, it's 6.
Hey, Wayne, we're out early,
Not really.
like 2 minutes.
But like I said, if somebody drops out and they're not gonna come, let's make it at 7 o'clock instead of 6.
I think you were supposed to ask, aren't you allowed to ask, like, after you decide whether you're going to move forward with the person?
You know, I haven't seen specifically the application, so I wasn't sure what was going on with respect to what he was talking about. It was on the application, so I just wasn't sure enough what was.
What's odd is that this is who he's looking at. She's good.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
And she didn't.